Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
Hello, MacPack. It is great to be back with you. Man, today has been crazy. I've been hustling to get this show ready and all set up to go. I'm literally out of breath because I've been running around my house here at the last minute trying to get things done. So anyway, for those of you who are new to the show, my name is Mac Worley III, and this is On the Move, the show that attempts to inspire you to stand up for your rights. I'm really excited about today's show. I got one of my favorite guests. He's coming back on again. His name is Dan Sandini. We're going to introduce you to him if you don't know who he is and give you an opportunity to find out some of the things that he's doing. He's doing quite a bit. He's a citizen journalist down in Portland, and he operates daylightdisinfectant.com. You can go over there right now and check it out. Again, that's daylightdisinfectant.com. He also has a YouTube channel where he puts up all of his videos where he's out covering these events, typically from the left. And what Dan likes to do is to expose some of the nonsense happening from the political left in this country. So I'm very, very excited to have Dan back on the show again, and we're going to be talking about some of the issues that he has uncovered. And we got some clips and things like that we're going to play. But first and foremost, I just want to say thanks, guys, for tuning in again. And for those of you who are new to the show and you haven't followed us yet on Spreaker, feel free to do that. That's Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. And just follow us there. That way we can know how many you guys are out there. And then additionally to that, you can also find out if we're doing any broadcasts maybe in the middle of the week. There may come a time when we actually do emergency broadcasts where there's information I want to get out to you guys very quickly. Or we may actually increase our podcasting. As of right now, though, I'm sticking with Sundays, but there may come a day when we do more. So anyway, without further ado, today is January 25th, 2015, and today's show title is The Commerce Clause and Why It Matters. So, and I'm actually curious, guys. I'm curious to hear if you guys appreciate these kind of analytical deep dives, I guess, to some of these topics that affect us all, but some people may find kind of dry. Personally, I don't think that the Commerce Clause is dry, and I'm excited to talk about it. But when it comes to this kind of stuff, I'm looking forward to talking and explaining it, and also having a conversation with you guys and seeing what you guys think. Well, hey, give me 1 second, guys. We have a telephone call. We have a new system here in place, and I don't know who this is, so we'll see. Hey, you're on the Move. This is Mac Worley. Who's this?
This is Donnie.
Hey,
Swartz,
Donnie.
Missouri.
Hey, what's on your mind, Donnie?
Not much. How's it going out there?
It's pretty good. So did you want to join in on the conversation today?
Yes.
All right. So what's on your mind? Go for it.
Well, I just kind of calling in, just listening to see what this is about. I'm running for Congress in the state of Missouri.
Yes, sir.
So I just kind of taking note and seeing what everybody feels.
Oh, okay. Well, just so you know, the call-in number is, if you want to get involved in the conversation or whatever, you can always call in, and that's what you did right now. But as far as for listening purposes, for those of you out there, if you want to listen, you can listen two different ways. You can go to haywiregulch.com, or you can go to our actual website, OnTheMoveShow.com. But thanks for calling in, Donnie. I appreciate it. So anyway, moving forward here, guys, this is funny. With the new system, we're going to have kind of snafus where we don't really know who's calling. And I'm going to have to start memorizing some phone numbers or writing it down or something to know who it is. Because at this point, we don't have a call screener set up. It just doesn't work with the way the current system is set up. So anyway, guys, I just want to cover everything that we're going to be talking about. Okay, so let's break it down. Like I said, first we're going to have Dan Sandini on, but prior to that, we're going to be doing the Weekly Defender. That's a segment where we talk about armed citizens in the news, and that's coming up next. Then we have Dan Sandini coming on at 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And after that, we're going into the segment called The Mac Attack, where we cover the Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution, how it's been used to give the federal government broad regulatory powers. And then after that, we have a whole slew of other topics that I want to get to. And like I said, if you guys are actually interested in hearing more stuff like this Commerce Clause show that we're going to do today, let me know, because this is important. I want to hear feedback from you guys, and I want to hear what you guys want to hear about. So, that's the most important thing. But I figure, a lot of what I try to do is to educate through history and, talk about some gray areas that a lot of people don't necessarily know about. So I figured the Commerce Clause, as well as, I guess, the General Welfare Clause, which I think we may have covered in a previous episode. But these are good topics because they do give a lot of power to the feds through the Constitution. And it's been expanded and reinterpreted through the judiciary, the Supreme Court. And if you guys listened to a few episodes, we had the judicial review episode where we talked about the Marbury v. Madison case and things along those lines. Is that those things that gave the federal government all of this power as far as the Supreme Court goes. The Supreme Court can now, based on judicial review, they can, and we all know this now, but they can decide what is constitutional and what is unconstitutional in terms of laws. But as we illustrated in that episode, the act of judicial review, that's nowhere in the Constitution. So nowhere at all in the United States Constitution gives the Supreme Court the authority to determine if laws are constitutional or not constitutional. So it's kind of why I'm doing things in this order here, to give you guys a layout of how things work and why they work, and how important, first of all, the Supreme Court has been in influencing the Constitution, how it's applied to us, how our government uses it. I mean, it's astounding to me that this branch of government, which was never given this power, has influenced and changed how the Constitution is interpreted. And I always bring it back to this main point. How can a branch that got its power from this document, the Constitution, how can the judicial branch interpret the Constitution to mean something less than what it clearly states? Like in terms of the Second Amendment, for example, shall not be infringed. And we hear all the time, people saying, what do you not get about shall not be infringed? We hear that all the time. And it's kind of comical when you start allowing this branch, the judicial branch, to start interpreting these things, because they don't have the authority, or at least they were never granted. They took it. And, we've talked about in that episode what I think would be reasonable steps. And, I was just piggybacking off of Mark Levin's Liberty Amendments, specifically in terms of what he thought about the Supreme Court. But I digress. Anyway, let's move forward here into the show. As usual, you guys are welcome to join today's conversation by calling us at 360-450-5625. Or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com, and we'll read your emails live on the show. You can also get in contact several other ways through our Facebook, facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. You can message us on there. And again, don't forget to like us on there as well. You can also get us on Twitter, twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow or @OnTheMoveShow on Twitter. And, comment there as well. We like the participation with you guys. Also, the hub, like I said, hub for everything that we do is OnTheMoveShow.com. You can listen to the broadcast there. And in addition to that, you can also listen, because we're simulcasting at the same time as this, on haywiregulch.com. So feel free, guys, head over there, check out what those guys are doing. They have a lot of other programs, by the way, that they podcast over there. So check out the other programs. Good people over there. And personally, I'm really looking forward to getting to meet these guys and get to know all these other hosts and everybody else that's part of that network. So anyway, let's move forward here. I want to go ahead and move into the Weekly Defender. And for those of you who don't know, this is actually my favorite segment of the show. I love it. For me, it's really important because it illustrates how armed citizens use their firearms to defend themselves, their family, their property, something along those lines. And you would be surprised at how many times this happens. It happens so often. I believe there's a University of Florida study, if I'm remembering. It was like over 2.5 million times a year Americans use their firearms to defend themselves, like defensive gun uses. That's an outstanding number. It blows me away. And when you start talking about gun crime and crime statistics. If somebody whips out a number and says, oh, well, firearms are used this many times, such and such many times a year in a crime, I can guarantee you that whatever number they say is going to be substantially less than 2.5 million times a year. People using firearms defensively to defend themselves. And then you also have to factor in, think about this, okay? If 2.5 million people per year are using firearms, and again, what do we have? Like 330 million Americans here in the country, roughly 330. So 2.5 million out of that, all right, how many in that would be killed if they didn't have a firearm to defend themselves in that situation? How many? It's impossible to quantify. In addition to that, how many times are crimes just deterred, period? They never even happen because someone saw an armed citizen, a citizen with a gun. I think those are important questions to ask. But again, those are questions that the left simply will not be able to answer. But anyway, without further ado, here we go, the Weekly Defender.
And now it's time for Weekly Defender. You have the right to defend your life, the right to defend your family, and the right to defend your freedom.
All right, our first Weekly Defender we found on an article on NJ.com, and I believe this is NewJersey.com. A man armed with a gun entered a new neighborhood deli supermarket in Newark, New Jersey. Apologize for that. And attempted to rob the store. The store owner responded by retrieving a firearm and shooting the criminal, ending the attempted robbery. An investigation revealed that the armed robber has a criminal record involving drug and weapons offenses. A store employee told a local media outlet that he and the owner would not let fear stop them from working, stating, "To make a life, you have to work. Some people don't want to work." And this was on the 14th of this month, actually. Wow. And our next Weekly Defender we found on WTVJ in Miami, Florida. A pair of surveyors were on a job site in Plantation, Florida, when a man armed with a gun approached them, ordered the workers to the ground, and demanded their property. While on the ground, one of the surveyors drew a gun and shot the criminal, ending the robbery. In an interview with a local media outlet, the armed citizen's employer described the surveyor as a great kid. The employer went on to say that robbers targeting surveyors is a significant problem, stating, "There's actually a law enforcement database on all the robberies that are going on that are affecting surveyors, and there have been hundreds of instruments and equipment stolen." This was on the 22nd of this month, so the 22nd of January 2015. That's just a couple of days ago. Personally, I love hearing about how law-abiding citizens use their firearms to protect themselves. You have a right to defend your life and your family. You have a right to defend your property, and you have a right to defend your freedom. We at On The Move, we support your rights, and if you have a story about how you lawfully defended yourself, or you would like to comment on one of these stories, we would love to hear from you. Give us a call. The number to the show is 360-450-5625. Again, that's 360-450-5625. Or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. Anyway, at this point, we're going to go ahead and cut to our first commercial break. And when we come back, I want to talk about some articles that I've seen in the news. And then shortly after that, we're going to have Dan Sandini on. So don't go anywhere, guys. You're going to be really blown away at the story I'm about to cover with you guys. It's actually about an armed citizen. But things don't happen the way you may expect. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore. With the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mac Worley III.
Alright, so I apologize. Always, every episode, we have some sort of technical snafu, and, you know, this one, it can only be blamed on me. So, with that in mind, guys, I want to apologize to all of those over there on Haywire Gulch. I hit the wrong button, and apparently I did not... I was hitting the record button for some reason instead of the play button on this this program that I broadcast to simulcast through, and I just want to apologize to you guys. I will figure it out. It just takes me a little bit of time. But anyway, with that said, let me just recap for those of you on Haywire. We already covered the Weekly Defender segment, and we have Dan Sandini. He's a citizen journalist. He's going to be talking about some of the craziness he's exposed from the political left out here in the Pacific Northwest. Specifically, I believe it was in Portland. And he's got a clip. We're going to talk about it. We're going to address some of these issues, and I think you guys will really like this. And by the way, if you don't know who Dan Sandini is, first of all, what rock are you living under? And then secondly, go check him out, daylightdisinfectant.com, or his YouTube channel, youtube.com/daylightdisinfectant. He's really doing some great things. A lot of what he does is to expose what the political left is doing, some of the nonsense, some of the ridiculousness. And you guys, if you take a look at his channel on YouTube, you will see. And by the way, go ahead and subscribe while you're over there. So anyway, and then later on in this episode, we're also going to be covering the Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution, how it's been used to give the federal government some broad, very, very broad regulatory powers. And I'm going to give you a breakdown on that. And like I said previously, if you guys do like this kind of stuff, if you like these kind of analytical deep dives, so to speak, on some issues that some people may consider dry, like the Commerce Clause, for example, but you want to know how it affects you, give me your feedback. I'm really interested to hear what you guys have to say. If this kind of stuff is what you guys want to listen to, or if you want me to cover other things, just let me know. I just kind of want to get an idea as to what the audience, the Mac Pack out there has to say and what you guys think. And additionally, if you want to join today's conversation, you can do so in several ways. You can go to our Facebook, facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow, and comment on one of our links there. You can get us on Twitter, twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow or @OnTheMoveShow. You can call us 360-450-5625, or you can email us at talk@onthemoveshow.com. All right, so now we're pretty much caught up to speed, guys. And again, I apologize about that. So I want to cover one other armed citizen that's been in the news lately, and it's something that I find amazing. I mean, it's just incredible to me that this even happened at all, and I really want to get this information out there. So first and foremost here, this story is off of The Blaze, theblaze.com, and this was written by Dave Urbanski. So hat tip him. And all right, so this guy's name is Michael Foster. He was in a parking lot in Florida at a Walmart earlier this week when he saw a man wearing a holstered handgun under his coat and walking into the Brandon store. That's apparently where they were. So Foster, he took it upon himself, he's age 43, to follow the man, and the man was identified as Clarence Daniels. This man is 62 years old. So a 43-year-old man is following a 62-year-old man, and that 62-year-old man just so happens to be armed, and it's concealed under his jacket. So what does this Foster, age 43, he sees this guy. What does he do? He follows the guy, and then he proceeds to tackle him in the entrance area of Walmart. He tackles him, and they released the video. I've watched this video. It is crazy. It just blows me away. This older guy, he's walking in. Again, he's age 62, and all of a sudden a 43-year-old man from behind tackles him in the lobby. All right? This video shows Foster bringing Daniels down from behind, just feet away from 3 small children. And the sheriff's department actually said that they used a chokehold. Foster used a chokehold to bring Daniels down. So we're talking about a 43-year-old just starting to choke out a 60-something-year-old man, 62-year-old man. And Foster is yelling that Daniels had a gun. And Daniels is yelling, "I got a permit to legally carry the gun." All right? He wasn't doing any actions with the gun. He wasn't threatening anybody. He's just minding his own business, walking with a holstered gun. And this guy just comes out of nowhere and tackles him. All right, so the surveillance video, it shows that Daniels is continued to be held by Foster, and he's twisting his legs around him and like wrapping him up basically as others approached and assisted in the detainment. And all the while, they're screaming, "He's got a gun!" And Daniels is sitting there, "I got a permit for it." I just want to run this by you guys. Can you imagine you being just out there legally just carrying a gun to defend yourself? You're not, it's even concealed. All right. Just because somebody looked inside your jacket and they saw it, that doesn't mean you weren't trying to conceal it. You had a jacket on, and he's got a permit for it. Can you imagine? I know many of you who listen out there carry guns. Some openly carried. Some, probably many of you probably conceal carry. But can you imagine just being tackled and choked out because you have a gun on your person, but you're not threatening anybody, you're not doing any kind of malicious activities, you're not doing any actions that should warrant somebody to be physically violent with you? Can you just imagine that for a moment? How frightened would you be in that scenario if people are screaming, "He's got a gun, he's got a gun," and you're like, "No, I'm not doing anything with it. Please, calm down. I'm not." This is the nonsense that is being bred with, honestly, I think it's the political left. We're being brainwashed. And, oh, by the way, I believe I might have a clip. I actually don't know if I still have this from I do. Great, perfect. Attorney General Eric Holder saying that we need to brainwash our citizens to radically think differently about guns. Here's a clip.
I've also asked the school board to make a part of every day some kind of anti-violence, anti-gun message. Every day, every school, at every level. One thing that I think is clear with young people and with adults as well is that we just have to be repetitive about this. It's not enough to simply have a catchy ad on a Monday and then only do it every Monday. We need to do this every day of the week and just really brainwash people into thinking about guns in a vastly different way.
One more time.
Every day of the week and just really brainwash people into thinking about guns in a vastly different way.
Well, right now they're succeeding. They are succeeding right now. They have managed to brainwash a significant portion of the population to see an inanimate object, an object in which it can perform absolutely no actions, but to see it and to literally wet their pants out of fear. Fear of an object. The object is not the problem. It's the actions that people do with the object. And in many cases, those actions are significantly dwarfed, at least the negative actions are significantly dwarfed compared to the defensive actions with that weapon, with that object. Like I said, 2.5 million times a year, Americans use their firearms defensively. 2.5 million. you compare that with any number, you can add up all the numbers of crimes that have happened, and 2.5 million is going to dwarf that. I've looked through the statistics. Granted, some of them may be a little old. I haven't seen them for. I think the last one I was looking at was 2013 or something like that from the FBI statistics. But please feel free to do your own research. Don't take my word on it. But University of Florida study has concluded that 2.5 million times a year Americans use their firearms defensively. So this object shouldn't be feared. If anything, it should be revered and respected because it has saved lives. It has saved far more lives than it has been used to take lives through violence and coercion. Anyway, here's a great twist to this news story, though. When the deputies got to the scene, we're talking about Foster's and Daniels. Again, Foster's is a 43-year-old person, 43-year-old man who was attacking the 62-year-old Daniels. All right, Daniels was armed, and Foster, he actually got arrested. It was great. All right, so the officers get to the scene, and they did not cart off Daniels. Instead, they arrested Foster, who was charged with battery, and I think this is great. I think this is what needs to happen. You know what? Hey, liberals out there, if you want to continue doing this kind of stuff, you're going to end up in jail. All right? If you have an irrational fear of an inanimate object, so much so that you feel that you need to assault and batter elderly citizens who are doing nothing out there that should warrant alarm for the safety of others, you know what? This is what you deserve. You deserve to sit in a jail cell. It's not the gun owners that are out there causing the problems. It's people like this. And by the way, if you watch this video, it is fascinating to watch human psychology at work. You know, people are wrestling around on the ground, and a crowd of people are just kind of like come over to the doorway and poke their head in and like, there's some dude beating up an old man over there. I guess I shouldn't do anything about that. You know, hardly anybody jumps in, and then when they do, it's only a couple people that jump in to help, and it looks like they're restraining the old man. You know, it just blows me away that the people out there, you know, don't feel the need to actually jump in and help. You know, if it was me, I'm the kind of person that if I see somebody getting assaulted out of nowhere, and these people see it, you know, the guy walks in, he wasn't doing anything, all of a sudden the guy comes in from behind and starts choking him out, and people just scattered. People are like, oh, get me away from this. You know, if I saw that, I would be the first person to jump in and help and try to prevent people from getting hurt, especially, you know, somebody who wasn't even doing anything. You can clearly see from the video that this guy was not even paying attention. This Daniels, he was not even paying attention. He didn't have any interactions with Foster. He just walked by him. And all of a sudden he gets choked out for no reason. So anyway, I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say about this. Give me your thoughts. You can give us a call, 360- hold on a second, I forgot that number. 360-450-5625. Or you can email us at talk@OnTheMoveShow, our Twitter, our Facebook. And I'm going to sort out some technical problems here on the other side of this break. And when we get back, we should have Dan Sandini on the line, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mac Worley III.
And we're back. All right, so we've covered a lot already here, and we've had a lot of crazy stuff happen. Again, every episode it's something. We always seem to have some kind of technical snafu or technical problem during the show. So anyway, we should be having Dan Sandini from the DaylightDisinfectant.com giving us a call here. He's going to be joining us. Just give you a quick little heads up of who Dan is if you just joined us. Dan is a citizen journalist. He is out here in the Pacific Northwest where I'm actually located, and he covers a lot of stuff that the left does. And he tends to expose a lot of their craziness, a lot of the stuff that they do that just doesn't make any sense. So anyway, he should be calling in any minute. I got him scheduled for right now, so he should be calling in any second here. So anyway, we're going to move forward here a little bit. I want to talk about some other things that are in the news. I got some articles on standby. Have you guys heard about this Davos climate change convention? It's being held overseas, and I believe it's in Switzerland, if I'm remembering correctly. Anyway, this thing has been talked about. Earlier this week, it's been all over the news. They were talking about how important it is, and the left is touting this as such a good thing. But I think that it's kind of ironic that the people who came into Davos, a lot of them flew private jets. And by a lot of them, I don't just mean just a couple here, a couple there. I mean 1,700 private jets came into Davos for this economic forum to discuss climate change. Doesn't this sound a bit hypocritical to you? And this is the mentality of the left. It's do as I say, not as I do. Our political elites are over here telling us that you don't know what's best for you. Let me tell you what's best for you, and I know what's best for me, so don't even, I'm beyond reproach. Don't even get on my case, all right? I'm super rich. I'm smarter than you. I'm elitely educated. I go to I graduated from an Ivy League college, and I have many leather-bound books. So this is the kind of mentality of the left, at least the political elite left. That really frustrates me. All right, these people think that they're out there saving the world by telling us that we need to stop driving, which, by the way, I don't know if you guys caught it, but Al Gore at this convention said that we basically need to spend billions of dollars to change the way all of our cities are set up, the infrastructure of our cities, and then we need to ban cars. Ban cars completely? What? What kind of psychopath is this? And by the way, this guy's flying around in a private jet. The day that I actually will stop calling these people hypocrites is the day that they fly coach. All right? These people don't fly coach. They don't even know. The only thing that they know that's coach is probably one of their handbags that they're carrying. The point is that these people tell you how to live your life, tell you what you can and cannot do, and then they go and do the very same thing. Like, for example, the left, they like to go in many of them, especially like Bill Clinton and Al Gore, they will say that they're vegans. Oh, I'm a vegan. That's cool, because that's what the political left loves in this country. These lefty hippies and people who don't change their underwear every day, they like to hear that their political elitists up there are vegans or vegetarians because cruelty to animals, dude. That's wrong, bro. That's not cool. So anyway, it's comical when you find out that these people, it's just a front. They're just saying it just to screw with you guys out there. Bill Clinton, for example, he's well known for loving meat, and he's been seen in diners across the world eating meat. So that doesn't sound very vegan or vegetarian to me. And then we get people like, for example, when we're talking about the hypocrisy of these elitist lefts. We get people like Bloomberg, for example, Michael Bloomberg, former governor. All right, this is the same guy that told you that you couldn't have a big gulp. All right, because he knows what's best for you. The nanny state knows what's best for you. These people will probably be in support of a program that would regulate the amount of food that you were allowed to eat that was bad for you. For example, I always make this joke, but I honestly believe that one day it could happen. I make the joke that one day people, especially with things like Obamacare, will have to have their health records consulted prior to ordering a pizza. So, can you imagine you call up to, let's say, I'm not going to plug any pizza joint, so forget it. Just a random pizza joint. You call up and you say, hey, I'd like to place a delivery, 1 large pepperoni pizza, and then they're like, oh, excuse me, Mr. Smith, we're going to have to check your health records here. Oh, according to your health quota, you've exceeded the amount of cholesterol that you can eat for this week and in this month, so you're not going to be allowed to order again until February 25th, 2015. I apologize for that. Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of thing that we're heading toward and nudging toward, and it's not going to seem so crazy by the time we get there. I'm telling you this. If you want to talk about public health, all right? And public health is a big area that the government gets involved in, They feel that they have the right to regulate and control everything through public health. And their justification, especially now, is going to be more and more that it costs the American taxpayer money. If they can actually justify, and again, this is all interpreted through the Supreme Court, so the United States Supreme Court is interpreting these kind of things, and they can decide if Congress, in fact, actually does have these powers. And when you're talking about public health, what is a bigger factor of public health than the kind of food that people put into their body? That is obviously a big public health factor, because what people eat ends up eating them sometimes. So think about this kind of thing. So, but these are the hypocrites. Bloomberg, for example, he did the big gulp in New York. He said, you can't have a big gulp drink. It's too sugary. You can only have up to a certain amount of ounces at one time. You cannot buy it. It is actually illegal for you to buy it and illegal for them to sell it to you. Crazy. And then we find out that, and he also he tried to do a sodium ban to make it so that restaurants could not have salt shakers on the table in New York. And I think he actually tried to push it a bit further as well. But we found out that Bloomberg is notoriously known for dousing his food with salt. So again, do as I say, not as I do. We know what's best for you. The nanny state rules. This is the kind of mentality, and this is why I have a distrust for government. Many of you out there may have realized that by now. I have not a disdain. I am not an anarchist by any means, and I just want to be clear. I understand that there is a necessary evil, so to speak, of government. We have to have some form of government, and because we do have to have that form of government, I'm of the opinion that we should restrict and bog it down with as much red tape as possible and put as many checks and balances on as possible. And any time that the government tries to expand its power, we should yoke it back. And I just want to give a quick example, a quick reference. Many of you may have seen these statues, these monuments, standing out in front of federal or Capitol buildings. Many of them are men on horses, and sometimes the horses are, standing on different legs. Each leg has a symbolism that it represents. I can't remember the symbolism off the top of my head right now. I wasn't planning on talking about this today, but depending on how many legs are on the ground, It depends on, it may represent something. So, but in a lot of these, especially in front of federal buildings or Capitol buildings, you'll see the rider of the horse pulling back on the reins. And, I saw that for a real long time, and I never thought twice about it. I just, okay, some guy on a horse, whatever, no big deal. You may read the plaque, and it's no big deal. You don't understand what it symbolizes, but I found out that these actually symbolize us pulling back on the reins of government, restraining the government, because governments naturally have a tendency to grow. That's what they do. And when you're talking about government interpreting whether or not government can expand its power, and this is what we're talking about with the Supreme Court, it's government. It is the government. And when they interpret that the government can take more of your power, that's like me, more of our power, for example, and I'm talking about the power of the citizenry. That would be the equivalent of me saying, you know what, I know this is your household, and, I'm just your mailman, and I have decided that I have the authority now to, do whatever I want in your house, and, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and tax you, and if you don't pay the tax, you have to pay a fine on top of the tax. For every time that you sit on your toilet and you flush it, you got to pay me. I know you gave me this position, but, it doesn't really matter because I've decided, I've reinterpreted our contract here. Perhaps a mailman wouldn't be a good job, but a good example. But you guys get the gist of it. That it's somebody deciding for themselves that they have more power and more authority than was given to them. And the document, the Constitution is not just some document that the government created. I mean, yes, a lot of these people are representatives, but this was an instrument of the people's will. This is some people believe it was divinely inspired. A lot of our founders did. But this document was based upon the consent of the people. And the government was granted powers based upon that consent. And for the government to just change the bargain halfway through, that to me, and they're not doing it through constitutional amending, by the way. This is the most despicable part of it. It would be one thing if the government wanted to change the Constitution. If they said, because for me personally, I have no problem with our Constitution being amended to restructure some of the powers within the government and whatnot. What I do have a problem with is changing the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights is set in stone as far as I'm concerned. And that is because these rights were never granted to us by the government. These rights are either self-evident, natural human rights, or endowed upon us by our Creator, if you're a religious person. And if that's the case, if these rights just naturally exist, who is the government to change that deal? They have no right. They have no authority. And I certainly don't consent. And part of that, too, I want to talk about unalienable rights. All right? And I use it unalienable, not unalienable. Unalienable. It means that no one can put a lien upon your rights. No one can take them away. Those rights just exist. They're natural. They are there. And it doesn't matter if somebody takes them away, and tries to take them away. They still exist. They just may not be respected, but you still have that right. And it's important to note, unalienable is pretty. It's an interesting word, and it's interesting that our founders chose to use this. It means that no one can take it away. You can't even give it away if you chose to. You can choose to not assert your rights, but you still have them, even if you say, "Hey, I don't want these. I don't want this right to bear arms. It scares me. I'm a liberal. I wet myself at the smell of gunpowder." This is impossible. You cannot give these rights away. They're unalienable. No one can put a lien on them. Anyway, at this point here, I'm going to go ahead and cut to a quick commercial break, and I'm going to see if I can get Dan Sandini on the line and figure out what the holdup is here. He was supposed to be on a little while ago. Anyway, we'll be right back after this commercial break. Don't go anywhere, guys.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore. With the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mac Worley III.
And we're back. If you want to join today's program and want to join the conversation, feel free. The number to the show is 360. I always forget this number. Hold on. I got to bring it back up here. Okay. 360-450-5625. 360-450-5625. Or you can email the show at talkingonthemoveshow.com. You can message us on facebook.com/onthemoveshow or get us on Twitter at OnTheMoveShow. Anyway, so I'm not sure where Dan is here, but we're going to go ahead and move to another article here. I hope everything's okay with Dan, but we'll keep pressing on here and cover more of recent articles in the news. If we don't hear from him by 6 o'clock-ish, around that time, we'll just go ahead and press into the Commerce Clause conversation that I wanted to get into today. So anyway, have you guys heard about the recent debacle, so to speak, or controversy with Seth Rogen and Michael Moore in regards to the American Sniper movie, and obviously in relation to Chris Kyle? There is a lot of stuff going on right now with this, and I want to get to this story here because I find it fascinating, and I think you guys will too. All right, so Seth Rogen and Michael Moore, they have ignited a huge debate all over the internet here and the Twitter sphere and things along those lines with their comments made on Twitter. And I want to get to these here because they're pretty interesting. So if you don't know, Clint Eastwood, he directed American Sniper. It was a story based on the book with the same name, written by Chris Kyle, American Navy SEAL Sniper. So, and Chris Kyle is known as the lethalist sniper in American history. He's got, I believe, over 160 kills confirmed by the United States military. I believe it was 255 unconfirmed in total. But Seth Rogen, he commented on Twitter that said, American Sniper kind of reminds me of the movie that's showing in the third act of Inglourious Bastards. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but this scene in the movie was actually a Nazi propaganda film that was used to basically bring a Nazi war hero, so to speak, that was shooting inside of a tower and killed a ton of people on the Allied side, and he was using this as a comparison. So basically, he's using American Sniper as a American propaganda video, so to speak. That was his reference to this. So. And this was directed by Quentin Tarantino, the Inglourious Bastards. So, anyway, he went on to comment because he got some heat from it. He kind of took a little step back here, and he says, "I just said something, quote, kind of reminded, unquote, me of something else. I actually liked American Sniper. It just reminded me of the Tarantino scene." So, That's actually not even the worst of the worst here. You all may be familiar, honestly, I hope that you're not, really, with the lefty scumbag Michael Moore. He's the one who's made a lot of controversial films, one of which was Bowling for Columbine, I believe. But he apparently, I don't know if he saw the movie or anything, but he posted on Twitter, and it stirred up the pot as well. And what he specifically said was, "My uncle killed by a sniper in World War II. We were taught snipers were cowards. Will shoot you in the back. Snipers aren't heroes, and invaders are worse." And then he went on to say here in another post, "But if you're on the roof of your home defending it from invaders who've come 7,000 miles, you are not a sniper. You are brave. You are a neighbor." Really? Okay, so I just want to analyze some of these things. This is the difference of thought process between a leftist, especially a Hollywood leftist, than everyday American citizens. All right, this kind of disrespect for the troops in general. Okay, this comment here about snipers aren't heroes and invaders are worse. All right. As a member of the military, I take great offense to this, I'm retired military. Many of you may know that I was security forces when I was in the Air Force, and for me, this has absolutely nothing to do with the content of character that American military has when you're talking about invaders. All right, we are not the ones deciding to go into a country. That kind of conversation is not had within the military itself. We're not saying, "Hey guys, you know what? I think we should go invade Afghanistan. Those guys are a bunch of jerks. Let's go get them." No, that conversation never happens at the soldier airman, level. At that just doesn't happen. So, who is calling the shots? These are the political elites. Again, political elites. The old men sending the young boys off to war. So why are you picking at... It's not even the root cause. Why would Michael Moore be picking on the soldiers? I think now we typically, within our society, a lot of people know and understand that even if you don't agree with the political choices of our leaders to send people into war, you support the troops. You support the people who are defending your freedom, your liberty, your ability to continue doing the things that you're doing, Michael Moore. And, it cracks me up. Michael Moore, he claims to be, this person who's out for the little guy. He's looking out for the little guy, all right? But Michael Moore is not the little guy. He's one of the 1%ers. He makes more money than most Americans will ever see in their lifetime. So how can somebody be a champion for the poor or a champion for the oppressed when they live inside this Hollywood bubble? And first of all, that they're not connected to the real world. They have absolutely no idea what the problems of everyday Americans are. So out of touch, ridiculously out of touch. But to go further, it's a bit hypocritical when he's talking about, where are the 99%, or we're going to go after like when Obama says, it's all about these rich fat cats who are not paying their fair share, and we're just gonna, we're gonna tax them more and spread that wealth around, But again, Obama is a millionaire, and so is Michael Moore. And in terms of Obama, by the way, this guy stands to be even more wealthy when he gets out of office. He's going to have book deals and all these different speaking engagements. He's gonna have plenty of time to kick back and just shoot the links as he loves to do. But this running a country nonsense, as far as he's concerned, is going to be all out of his way. He won't be bothered by all the trivial stuff that comes with running a country. But I digress. Anyway, I want to talk more about this Chris Kyle situation, and there was a response by one of the Navy SEAL's mother who was slain in Chris Kyle's units. I believe his name was Mark Allen Lee. He's a Navy SEAL sniper. He was in the same unit, same SEAL team as Chris Kyle, and he was killed on the battle. It's actually covered in the movie American Sniper. And his mom issued a challenge to Michael Moore. And here, I'll go ahead and play it for you guys.
The same thing Taya said. It means so much to know there's so many people out here that continue to support what we're doing. In memory of Chris, in memory of Mark, and at America's Mighty Warriors, we are dedicated to carrying on these two men's mission. Chris is to serve those who served us, and Mark ended his last letter home with, to my family and friends. Do me a favor, pass on the kindness, the love, the precious gift of human life. So Taya and I both pick up their weapons, put on their boots, and we stay in the fight because we do know what they would have wanted, what they were about, what they were doing. We do know who pays the price for our freedom. And I don't know if you guys heard, but I challenged Michael Moore that for all of you snipers that are out there, we'll run him through training just one day. We won't even make him go to combat. See if we can educate him a little bit.
As far as that guy goes, I think the only thing he's ever fought was cholesterol, and even that's kicking his ass.
Anyway, yeah, I just wanted to play the rest of that there so you guys could hear. The only thing he's fought is cholesterol, and even that's kicking his ass. For me, I personally have an issue with people standing on their high horse and trying to basically, say that the military, those troops in the military are the ones who are invaders. If you have a problem with the way that the government is conducting war, then that is on the politicians. That has absolutely nothing to do with the troops. And I've been trying to I'm trying to research a lot of information about Chris Kyle right now, and I'm going to cover a little bit more about this in an upcoming episode. For me, I'm disturbed at how many people out there are really just trying to rip Chris Kyle apart. And I want to find out, first of all, if their argument holds any merit, because where I stand on these things, I like to approach things objectively. For me, I almost instantly will support the troops. That's where I stand, but I don't want to do it blindly. So I want to have all the information. I want to find out who Chris Kyle really was, what these anti-Chris Kyle arguments are, and I'm going to present the evidence to you guys, everything I find in another episode, and you guys can be the ones to decide, and at least you'll understand what this anti-Chris Kyle side is talking about. You may disagree with it, and you may disagree with me. I basically I'm just going to present the evidence, and you guys decide for your own, what you think about the man. And again, I do want to be wary personally myself of this whole idea of hero worshiping. Nobody's perfect. All right, no one at all is perfect. So everybody has their problems. Even Dr. Martin Luther King, for example, he was unfaithful in his marriage. So every single person has their own failures that they have in their life, and I'm not saying that you should judge everybody and be really judgy all the time. No, but I am saying is just be careful of hero worship, because over the past few years, especially the more I've been doing this program and learning things, I realize that a lot of the people that I look up to in the past are really just a bunch of chumps. Typically, a lot of them are. Most of them are, they're all talk, but their actions are the opposite of their talk. I won't go into my personal heroes that I've had before, but I'm very, very careful nowadays before I attach my horse to anyone's cart, because I'm mistrustful. I've been burnt in the past, and maybe I'm a bit cynical. But in terms of Chris Kyle, I want to number one, find out if there's any merit to this anti-Chris Kyle sentiment, and if there isn't, I want to shut it down. I want to prove them wrong. And if there is, I want to at least get the information out there so you guys can have it. So anyway, at this point, we're going to cut to a quick commercial break. I just got in contact with Dan Sandini, so we should be having him on the line when we get back. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designed original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support.
Back.
Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mac Worley III.
All right, we're back. Man, I am having nothing but trouble here with this new setup. So anyway, at this point, we're going to have Dan Sandini on the line. Here he is calling in. I got him right now. Hey, Dan, are you there?
I am. How you doing, Mac?
I'm doing good. Sorry about the technical problems here, man. Like I said, we're trying out a new system. Everything is all brand new, and I'm trying to figure out how to integrate it all together. And you're actually our second caller that we've ever taken here. So first of all, thank you for joining us. And I just want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to our audience. Can you just explain? Because we've recently expanded our audience, and some people may not know who you are. Can you explain who you are, what you do, kind of what your stuff is about?
Sure. My name is Dan Sandini. I'm a citizen journalist. I had the opportunity of way back in 2009 of meeting James O'Keefe and getting some of my stuff featured on Breitbart.com. Got myself in one of Breitbart's movies. So I'm a videographer, basically. I take a camera and I'll go down to Sony Hadacam. I'll go down to various events. And I will try and do a, less than 5-minute YouTube. I try and limit myself to 5 minutes, less than 5-minute YouTube piece. And you can find all my stuff at daylightdisinfectant.com, or just go straight to the YouTube channel at youtube.com/daylightdisinfectant. And, so I'm a citizen journalist. And, it's a sort of a middle of the roader. I have over 1 million views. I think I got like 1,300,000 views. And there's two main YouTubers. I'm out of Portland, Oregon. So if folks know about Portland, it's in the Willamette Valley out here in Oregon. And you imagine the Willamette Valley is this little valley of blue and a sea of red, which is the state of Oregon. But the libs run the state of Oregon. And so Portland, I know some of your listeners have probably watched the show Portlandia. And Laughing at Liberals and I often, he's the other YouTuber down here, we often have discussions that it's worse than Portlandia. You just cannot make this stuff up, Mac. You can't. It's just crazy as all heck. And just getting around to what the latest story is. I just put it up this afternoon, and that's why I asked to call in. But if you go to daylightdisinfectant.com, at the top left-hand side of my webpage, you'll see a video there which is called Whitelandia. And it is you think that's something that I made up. I did not make it up. But the Portland teachers this week had a training session. It's a lecture which they received professional development units for. So they get credit towards their certification. It was called Whitelandia. It was at 4:30 on Thursday afternoon for 2 hours. I sat through the thing, and I went down, and I arrived at the event, and which was basically they had said they were going to show a movie. They didn't show the movie, but basically when I got there, they were ready for me. I have some past experience with Portland Public Schools, and they tried to get me not to film and not record a public event which was paid for by the taxpayer down at the Portland Public Schools. And I think you've got a clip of them trying to shut me down, and maybe you could play that if you have it handy.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you happen to know at what point in this that they're talking to you? Actually, you know what? I found it. Here it is. Here we go.
There's a camera recording in the back. Why is that different?
Yeah, just explain to you what our accounts are saying, and I'm passing that we're not allowed to
pass along as much as possible, but I disagree with that, and I'm not going to abide by that, sir. It's against the First Amendment. It's against Oregon law. And, this is a public event. The public is invited. Doesn't that bother you at all, sir?
I go by with the wish.
And,
so,
by the way, Dan, I don't know if you're able to hear that. We got this whole new system here. Okay, great, cool. All right, so
yeah, I was. Yeah, clear as bell. You're very clear too. It's great audio. Great, definitely better than what you were before. So
awesome.
Whatever system it is, once you make the connection, you sound great. So
awesome.
I'm not sure how it sounds.
Well, cool. So go ahead and tell us what was happening in that scene.
Okay, so yeah, I went into the as I got there. The event invite at the desk that I was checking in at was exactly the same as the one that I had received via email, with the exception of an orange highlighted area down at the bottom that said, not only could I not video I don't have to abide by FCC guidelines here, do I, by terms of what I say or anything like that?
Try to keep it
PG.
PG.
Can I drop that?
Yeah,
I'll try
to keep it clean.
I took a look at the bottom of this and I thought, oh yeah, the heck with you is what I said to myself, because they had said that I could not film a public event, and I know the Oregon code. It's very complicated here, but there are specific exceptions made in the code for recording of events, and one of them is explicitly public events with exposed microphones. Whoever wrote that law in the state of Oregon is just a genius, because it's just part of the First Amendment here in Oregon, is that we report on stuff that happens, and you can't, you can do all the loony, crap. You can do all the loony crap that you want, okay? But you have the opportunity as a journalist here to expose it, and that's what we've done. So I sat down in the front row and took out my camera. I passed the camera there, this big camera in the back with microphone and a bunch of microphones on the table and people with cell phones all sitting around. And this guy walks straight up to me, of course, because he knows who I am. I'm a conservative citizen journalist. And he tries to shut my camera down. It's Orwellian, Mac. It's Orwellian that someone would not know the Constitution well enough to know what a person's First Amendment right is, and it doesn't have anything to do with freedom of the press, really. It's freedom of speech, okay? And this person came and tried to. His name is Lorenzo Poe. I think it's Lolenzo. I may have spelled wrong, but it's Lorenzo Poe. And if you can wrap your head around this, or your listeners can wrap your head around the guy who's telling me to shut my camera down, he is the chief equity and diversity officer for the Portland Public Schools. I want that job. I want to be I want that one, Mac. That's what I want. So they tried to shut my camera down, and I refused to. He brought a strong man over there to try and intimidate me. You can see him kind of looming in the background, and I was scared at that point, because I really felt that they would, give me the boot. But they which they've done before.
Yeah.
Okay, but they did not. I held my ground, and I filmed, and they didn't toss me, despite having it written in the back, and despite them telling me not to, I did it anyway. So
that's one of the things that I love about what you do, because I absolutely agree with you as far as, it's a freedom of speech issue. In addition to that, it is also, you are a citizen journalist, so it is a press issue. You do have the right in a public area at a public event where the event is open to the public. And let's also point out the fact that this is in a public building provided with government funds paid for by taxpayers, and you are one of those taxpayers. So you have every right to access that building just as much as anybody does. But the concept and the whole idea of them not allowing people to actually record the words that they're saying. You know, they know that a lot of the stuff that they're saying is ridiculous and inflammatory, and it makes them look ridiculous when you post it. That's why they said, and I saw the little note that they had, it was, you know, you can take notes, but don't actually, you know, record. But to me, it's nonsense. And I love the fact that you're out there pushing the envelope on this and challenging them when they're trying to do stuff that they have absolutely no right to do. So first and foremost, good on you.
Thanks, Mac. Appreciate that. And I would just add to that. I would add to that is, you know, people say, is it freedom of the press or freedom of speech? And I used to think about that a lot. But Bruce McCain is my attorney here in Portland, and I've had a lot of discussions with him. And the real issue here is a person being singled out for their views, okay, and that person not being able to, and that's what they're doing. I have them on tape saying it's because it's me that they're shutting me down, and that's key. They know they're in the wrong as a civil rights violation. There, I can tell you right now, their attorney has told them, and it's from the way you argue that in court, Mac. And you're right also, it is freedom of press thing too, but the primary argument there that would go up in front of a judge, a constitutional judge, would be because I'm being singled out for my views. I forget exactly what they said, but, you know, he's going to make it, you know, he's a right-wing conservative, he's going to make a mockery out of it. That language right there, that's exactly what the Founding Fathers were preventing against, okay? That's precisely what we have a First Amendment, is that based on your views, you won't be excluded from exercising your freedom of expression. That's what's being repressed there, if you will.
And they're referring specifically to what you're going to do with the footage after that, and that is your freedom of expression. I get what you're saying. I get the argument. That makes sense. So as far as some of the things that they talked about at this, do you want to comment, or you want to play some other clips from the video in this?
You could play that. Just let's give a little intro to what it is. But okay, so what it was this was a lecture on white privilege, and for your listeners, white privilege is the fact that racism exists and you can't get rid of it. And racism is endemic in the culture; it will never go away, and you are not supposed to be colorblind. You know, I was taught be colorblind. Evaluate people based upon what their capabilities are, based upon what their character is, not how they appear to you. But that is not what white privilege says. White privilege says that admit you're a racist. Racism is not a bad thing. You don't have to be a bad person to be a racist. And that black people should be treated differently from white people. That's what white privilege is. And now what we're going to listen to, if we listen to the very beginning, it's probably about 7 seconds here before you get to my little bumper, is the film's co-producer, Tracy McDonald, talking to you about how you need to get comfortable with this, people. You need to get comfortable with having white privilege because you can't get rid of it. So get comfortable with it.
And I will go ahead and play that clip right now. Give me 1 second here, get it all set up. There we go.
We're making this film largely because we want to say, hey, white people, guess what? Sit with this discomfort of holding this privilege and this power, because you do.
Yeah, just basically get comfortable with your white privilege because it exists. And if you listen to the clips, they're quite exacerbatory. There's a guy in there who says that the Republican Party, and then he stops, he says, the white Republican Party demonized President Obama following his State of the Union address. He's their head advisor for the film Whitelandia. So he refers to how many black Republicans are there in the Republican Party? How many do we need? We got Colin Powell, Condoleezza Rice, Thomas Sowell. I'm not sure, how does he think he's not being insulting to those people? And basically, that's the basic premise of this, is that, you need to have white guilt. Black people need to be treated differently, not the same as everybody else. They need to be treated differently. Black children learn differently than white children and need to be taught differently than white children.
And
that's what white privilege is.
When they're saying differently, what in particular are they referring to? Are they referring to something as long as like affirmative action, or are they saying that they need preferential treatment or something along those lines? What do they mean?
Yeah. I think that I wouldn't want to put words in their mouths, but they lack concrete examples. I noticed this about this discussion is they'll take a trip back in history and talk about how blacks were prohibited from the state of Oregon at one point or something. But when it comes to present day and what should be done, or how precisely there is state-sponsored racism, which this movie says there is right now. They say that this movie shows state-sponsored racism. I want somebody to give me one example because, Mac, I couldn't see it. In 2 hours of sitting there, there was not a single example of what state-sponsored racism is now in the state of Oregon. But they claim it exists and that Oregon is close to achieving its goal of being a white homeland. One of the things that one of the people pointed out in this particular set of clips, and I'll be putting this out in 3 volumes, is that she's extremely upset because there are no black crane operators in the state of Oregon. It took me 2 Google searches to find one. Okay, so it's a lie. It's a lie. You make it up as you go along. Make it up as you go along, and the idea is, part of what's going on here, Mac, is that there's this business in the state of Oregon of teaching this sort of stuff, okay? This, white privilege, and let me see, some of the other ones they've had is, let me see if I can get it right, it's post-traumatic slave syndrome, was another one of these things that I sat in on. And basically the whole, perpetuating this idea, and at some of these events they have asked, that's out in the Portland Tribune, they have asked the white teachers to stand on one side of the auditorium and the black teachers to talk on to stand on the other, and for the white teachers to have to tell the black teachers how they give examples of how they have had white privilege in their lives, okay? I'm sorry, but call me a racist, but I don't believe white privilege exists in our society right now. And where it does, it's racist. And those people, and it's wrong to be a racist, okay? But me personally, I don't treat black people any differently than I treat white people. I treat people based upon what their capabilities are. And that's what I think the Founding Fathers wanted to say, okay? But these people want white people to have white guilt. They want to admit to their white guilt. Like I was saying, stand on both sides of the auditorium and talk about it, and teach your kids that too. That racism is endemic in our culture, and it's I don't know. It's hard to listen to at some point. At some point, sitting in there.
I can imagine. And I get frustrated because I'm a frequent visitor of your YouTube channel. And again, for our listeners out there, feel free to go subscribe to him. YouTube.com/Daylight Disinfectant. I get frustrated when I see it, and I even commented on this. This video. For me, I'm sick and tired of these people telling me that I should feel bad because of the color of my skin. That to me is inherently racist. That to me is them saying, "Oh, you're white. You should feel bad about being white." I didn't have anything to do with slavery, and in fact, I'm pretty sure that my family didn't even own slaves. We're not a rich family. It's not like I'm the freaking Vanderbilt or something. I am a middle class family background. That's where I come from. So it's to me it's ridiculous. But you're right. There is a big business in terms of this racial hate spewing, trying to race baiting, and it's not just in Portland though. I mean, we're talking about Al Sharpton and his ilk. People out there whose jobs it is to create this kind of divisiveness and spew. It's basically reverse racism. It's where the majority is it's okay to be racist against the majority, and I have a fundamental disagreement with that. It's not okay to be racist at all. If you're racist, I'm going to call you out on it, and I don't care. I'm unafraid of being referred to as racist. I I personally do not care what these people think about me. But you're absolutely right in terms of, when you said earlier, this state is deep, deep blue. And that's, one of the reasons why in the intro of the show, we're deep within occupied territory out here. At least I feel like it. There's a few spots of red, and people like you and Laughing at Liberals and Leo Stratton. You guys out here are, for me, a beacon of hope for this area. I really, I hope that you guys continue pushing forward. And even up in Seattle, we got Johnny Rocket. He's a libertarian with a show just like kind of ours here. It's a libertarian rock show. So there are spots of hope that I think, but going forward too into what you said as far as how vague they are with their message, the left, and this holds true, I think, with every single movement that they have. I mean, you look at the Occupy movement, and even they're vague in labeling their movements, giving them names. I think they use that to play on the ignorance of some of the people that they think that they can use to their advantage. We talked about in the past useful idiots, as Karl Marx, the founder of communism, the person who created the whole concept of communism. He literally wrote the book on it, and they're using the playbook. They're using the exact playbook. But I absolutely agree with you in terms of judging people based on the content of their character. I don't care what color your skin is. I don't care what your background is. If you're a good person, I'm gonna respect you, and if you're not, I'm not gonna respect you. I don't care, if you're calling me a racist or yelling me down. I don't have to respect anyone.
No, I don't expect any. I don't expect nor receive any special privilege because I'm white, and a Hispanic person shouldn't expect nor receive any special privilege because they're Hispanic. Okay, and I think that we're all Americans, and that's what I think gets lost in this. And that is the shame of it, and that is the breakdown of American culture. And I think, if you look at the nefarious motivations behind all of this, you look at the George Soroses of the world that have funded this Don't Shoot Ferguson thing, which creates this huge racial divide in our society, okay? Why are they doing it? And the reason why is because it tears us apart as Americans. It takes young people with impressionable minds, and it sets in motion the ideas that white people are out to get you, that they can't stand you, that whatever it is, okay? And they do it, and now it's in schools, okay? And they're not happy just having it. It used to be they were happy just having it at the university level. But now, and I haven't released this yet, but in the next version of this, in the next version of this Whitelandia thing, I'm gonna show the movie's producers talk about how they are trying to get it into the curriculum. The movie Whitelandia, they are going to try and get it into the curriculum for the Portland Public Schools. So as a student, you will be forced to watch a movie which tells you that you have white privilege, that you should be guilty, you should feel guilty about being a white person, okay, and that you must sit and watch this movie in order to pass your courses. That is what these people are trying to do. That's where they're going. And they are not, and the communists have known this for a long time, okay? They're infiltrating the schools. They began at the university level, and now they're trying to move it to the high schools and to the grammar schools. That's exactly what they're trying to do here. And now I could just mention one concrete example of the thing that you would be called a racist for not supporting. Right now, the mayor of Portland, our mayor's name is Charlie Hales. Let's see if your listeners can get their minds around this, okay? He has banned the box on the city applications for a job, which means that the city can no longer put on a job application, have you ever committed a felony, okay? Have you ever gone on trial for a felony or whatever, okay? You can't put anything about having committed a felony on an application. And the city's mayor now wants that to go public, so that the public would be banned from asking a person about their criminal record, and he wants to, in the city and statewide, okay, he supports it statewide as well, and he wants to, they have this in Philadelphia now, if you can imagine, maybe you have a listener in Philadelphia, can call in, okay, $10,000 tax credit, Mac, for a business that hires a felon, okay? I'm not saying that felons should pay for their crimes for the rest of their life, okay? But if you commit a rape, Okay, there ought to be a box on the application down at the daycare center. Okay, use common sense, right? That says, have you ever committed a crime? That you don't have to just rely on the fact that that you ran a background check, which of course everybody should do. But that's the next thing they're going to do, Mac. They're going to ban background checks, and they're going to fine you if you do run a background check on somebody. Mark my words, it will happen.
Now,
okay, inside the city.
Is this for public, as far as like working for the government use, as far as this?
Right now, ban the box is only for the city government. Mayor Hales wants to pass a law so that any business that does business inside this city will not be allowed to put a box asking about your criminal record on the job application. And Teresa Rayford, the head of Don't Shoot Portland, which is the Ferguson organization here in Portland, says that they have state-sponsored legislation now to do it for statewide too, so that private employers statewide would be banned from asking people about their criminal records.
Wow, yeah, that is unbelievable. I have a very hard time. Personally, for me, I'm a little different than a lot of people. Again, my philosophy tends to lean libertarian in nature. So, and I love the fact that a lot of people have disagreements within the conservative movement. A lot of people disagree with me. But I am an advocate for prisoner or at least people who have been released. Their rights to be reintegrated back to society, but the way it stands right now, I don't believe that it could happen because the system is just straight up broken. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. People don't necessarily, just because you've been released from jail, that doesn't mean that you've been rehabilitated. And it certainly doesn't mean that you've paid your debt to society. You've just simply served your time as it stands right now because of prison overcrowding, and we got all these drug offenders in our prisons, which is now making us have to make room for the violent. The violent felons have to go, and they get released early, due to good behavior or whatever, just because of overcrowding. Personally, if our prison system was perfect, and only people who could do no harm to society were released from jail. If we were insured in some way, which would be hard to prove, but in some way that they would not be a danger to society ever again, that whatever credible threat they were before does not exist anymore. If at that point those people being released were all angels, then yeah, take that box off. I don't think that these people should be discriminated against. But in terms of the way the system is now, we got violent felons that are returning to the streets. They're going back to lives of crime. I think that number one, I want to know if these people were in my freaking government. That's important. I want to know. And secondly, if I'm a business owner and I choose not to employ felons, that's my right. I can choose who I want to enter into contracts with, and I have every right to find out all the information that I want about this person through asking. And if I want to run a background check on them, that's my right too. That's what I think. What are your thoughts on that, Dan?
Well, what if you're a young person? Let's talk about the subsidy. All right, let's get the box and talk about the subsidy that he's going for. Okay, why should if I'm a young person looking for a job and I'm a very qualified person and I've had some choices to make in my life, okay, and I've made the right choices. It hasn't always been easy, but I have. People ask me to be a gangbanger, or people ask me to participate in crimes, and I decided not to. Now I'm in competition with the people who made the wrong choices, okay? And they are being incentivized ahead of me in the job search. It's like writing a check because these businesses pay well over $10,000 in downtown Portland, okay? So what's happening is they are in competition with a felon, okay, who got out of jail, maybe he's a rapist, okay? And in a job search, the employer is looking at that felon going, I am going to get a $10,000 tax break for this guy, so I'm not going to hire this guy. And, I talked to a few people that I know in the music business, and really where it works out, Mac, is there's a kind of a revolving door on places like the Crystal Ballroom and places like the Aladdin Theater. A lot of the music industry, a lot of the live show industry, sound, lighting, that kind of thing, bouncers, that kind of thing tends to attract this, the criminal element in downtown Portland. And so those businesses are going to look at this as being a cash cow, and that's how they're going to, believe it or not, that's how they're going to get this thing through, or they're going to try to anyway. I think we dinged up Charlie Hales quite a bit this week. That video got over 7,000 views. It was blogged up at Progressives Today and a couple of other big blogs. So I think that people are taking a hard look at that and going, hey, should we really be incentivizing, hardened criminals above, John Doe on the street in a job search? And people are saying, no, I don't think that's the right thing to do. And personally, I don't think you should. Why should an employer be banned about asking somebody about their criminal record? I don't get it. If you choose not to do it, that's fine. That's your business, okay? And if you choose to do it, I wouldn't necessarily, if I felt a person was honest when he was across from me and said that, hey, you know what, I made a mistake, or, this woman fake ID'd me at one point, and, she was 17, or something like that, and he was honest with me and said, hey, I really need the job, and I think I'm going to do a good job for you, and I can contribute to your bottom line. Here's how I can do it. I'd hire that guy in a second. It would have nothing to do with it. But it would make me look critically at a person, okay, who was across from me, who I thought who's still going to be in a crime. And if it was somebody who couldn't follow rules and someone who, resented authority, I would say, hey, you know what? You're not going to be a good person to work for me, and I'm not going to hire you. So I don't think our employers should be, I don't think they should get $10,000 per guy, and I don't think she should be banned from doing anything. And I honestly, when it comes to government, I think that box should be on there. If the city shouldn't be banned from hiring them, but they should be able to ask the question and make the evaluation.
Yeah,
right?
and we're talking about working for the public. I absolutely agree with you. We have every right to know and at least ask the question. I mean, we're talking also about freedom of speech issues in terms of asking questions. I mean, that's ridiculous. But hey, we got to wrap it up, Dan. We're about to cut to a quick break. Before we do, though, can you give our listeners your information, website, all that good stuff, social media?
Right. As I always say, I invite your listeners to go read all about it at daylightdisinfectant.com or go to YouTube channel Daylight Disinfectant, all one word. And please, folks, hit the subscribe button and watch my latest video called Whitelandia. Thanks for having me on, Mac.
All right. Thanks again, Dan. I really appreciate having you on. Take care, buddy.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, guys, so we're going to cut to a quick commercial break. By the way, while we're doing that, feel free to go check out Dan's stuff. He's got a lot of videos, not just this Whitelandia. He's got a ton of other amazing videos on there. You can check out his stuff, youtube.com/daylightdisinfectant.com. And go ahead and subscribe to him, too. Give him a little bit of love over there, all right? Anyway, we'll be right back after this break, and we're going to be covering the Commerce Clause upcoming, and we may be getting some phone calls from some of you out there. So anyway, feel free to join in on the conversation. The number to the show is 360-450-5625. We'll be right back.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mac Worley III.
And we're back. I appreciate you all sticking with us. We're going to move forward here very quickly, and we have a caller on the line. I believe this is Curtis. Hey, Curtis, are you there?
Yes, this is Curtis.
Hey, all right. So I want to give you guys a little heads up of some local issues out here in the Pacific Northwest. And, Curtis is coming on. He wants to talk about something that's happening. I believe it's up in Kelso. Is that correct, up near Longview?
That is correct, in Kelso.
Okay, and this is Washington State. So talk to me a little bit and explain the situation here of what's happening. And, and then, if you would, if you could tell people what they could do to get involved.
Okay, so the city of Kelso is following through with a state mandate to make a 20 to 30-year comprehensive plan for the entire city. And it's basically just to tell everybody what we're going to be doing with our city. And this came from Olympia. Well, the city went out and they hired this guy from Olympia, $47,000 to come up with this plan. And when you go through the plan, the first 5 pages is the story of Kelso in the year 2039. And it basically describes Kelso as looking like the nice neighborhoods in San Francisco or Vancouver, which Kelso is not like that. Folks out there that don't know anything about Kelso, that's not Kelso. Never going to be that way. The citizens, I don't think they even really want it that way. It probably would look something like that. So in the plan, specifically, there's at least 2 sections that calls for public acquisition, which is just eminent domain. And one in particular, I believe it's land use objective number 7. I don't have any of the paperwork with me because I just got off work, so I'm sitting in my car. It calls for keeping a list. Let's see if I can remember it. What it basically says is keep a list of privately held properties that's not suitable for development, which the city is the one who comes up with what property is going to be suitable for development. So you get the permits from them. And to decide which properties would be best suited to be publicly acquired for such purposes as parks and recreation. It gives this whole list of eco stuff, and then the last thing on the list is parking lots. Like what they literally have is the wording in there to pay people's land to turn it into parking lots, parks.
And we're talking about eminent domain, essentially, is what this all boils down to, is that the federal government, or I'm sorry, not the federal government, but the government in general here, I believe, what is this, county, state, city?
City. I call it all the state, but yeah, it's the city.
Okay. So the city government is saying that they have the right to your private property through eminent domain to seize what is yours, what you own outright, and then take it and turn it into a parking lot. That this is something that I fundamentally have a major issue with. So what can people do to oppose this and get involved and help out your guys' struggle up there in Kelso?
They could call the mayor and to let them know that they don't believe public domain is okay. They call it public acquisition in the plan, but it's eminent domain. And one of the worst parts about this whole situation is the local paper is not covering this one tiny bit. They had in the paper. Okay, so last week I gave testimony at a public hearing about this. And the salesman that came up with this plan, he came down from Olympia, and it was he sounded like a used car salesman telling me Agenda 21. And I quickly text messaged one of the city council members, and I said, who is this guy? What is he, from the government? And I was just joking. He said, yeah, he's a communist from Olympia. And listening to him, that was pretty much the worst part, was the taking people's land for parking lots. But it's got stuff in there like you can't bring any mobile homes into the city unless it's in a mobile home park. And then they did have in there mobile home parks are going to be phased out over time. And there's a bunch of other just malarkey in there. And so they had this public hearing, and the Daily News, which is the fish wrapper for Longview Kelso, they had an article in there with 5 paragraphs, not a word about the public hearing. They talked about how the city wanted to hire the more expensive engineer which wasn't on the agenda, so the paper had to have gotten that from the city manager.
Wow. Okay, so people can get involved. I'm assuming that a good idea would be to contact your mayor. Now, I'm doing my own research here while you're talking. The mayor of Kelso is David Futcher. Is that right?
I believe it's pronounced Future.
Future. Okay, so that's and for all those who would like to get involved and help out in this situation, by the way, the kelso.gov website is hilarious because it doesn't even load right now. So that'll just give you the inconsistencies here of the government of Kelso, how inept they are at their job. They can't even keep a website up, but apparently.
From the Daily News and told them to start reporting on what's going on in our city council meetings because they just blacked everything out because they don't like one particular city councilman.
Mm-hmm. This is important to know, guys. For all my listeners out there, you guys can affect change right now. You can do this, and I'll tell you why. Kelso is a small city to begin with, so I'm willing to guess, and I'll go out on a limb here, Curtis. If let's say 50 people contacted the mayor, do you think that would have an impact?
Oh, most definitely.
Okay, so we're talking about a really small little town here. I've been in Kelso several times. It's small, and people like it the way it is. They don't want to have their land stolen from from the city government and then turn into a parking lot for some kind of city beautification or expanded, turn it into something that these people don't want. So right now I'm looking. I don't know if this number is correct, but guys, I challenge you right now, please call this number. It's 360-423-1719. Again, I'm going to say that one more time. 360-423-1719. You can stop tyranny right in its tracks right now. You guys out there listening, please call that number. Or you can email the mayor. His email is Futcher. I'm going to spell it. It's DFUTCHER@kelso.gov. Again, DFUTCHER@kelso. That's spelled KELSO.gov. Please call. Please get involved because you guys can be a difference and make some real change. I know a lot of people think that our votes don't count or we're not able to affect any kind of change, but especially when we're talking about local governments, we can really make a big impact. So I challenge you guys to all please get involved. And if you have any questions, if you missed that, please message me. I'll give it to you again. But anyway, Curtis, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
If the people would like to call the Daily News editor or write the Daily News editorial board and ask them to start reporting on what's happening in our city council meetings, they don't like the city councilman named Jared Franklin. For a number of reasons, mainly because he's for liberty. That's what it basically boils down to. If anytime he says anything, they just completely shut it out of the media. And ever since I started showing up, now I'm not in the RLC, I'm a Libertarian. I'm the chairman of the California Libertarian Party up here. But I believe that the newspaper is equating as to be like the same thing. Because every time they interviewed me after I talked about fluoride a couple weeks ago, not a single word was mentioned that there was public testimony on them purchasing $300,000 worth of fluoride. And so the newspaper is blacking out what's going on, and they're just talking to the city manager. So it's almost as bad as the city taking people's land. It's like it's just fascism.
Yeah. And that to me, and by the way, thanks for your call, Curtis. I really appreciate it. But as far as what he's talking about, as far as fluoride, guys, I personally have an issue with fluoride in our drinking water. I don't want to sound like Alex Jones, conspiracy theorist or anything, but what we're talking about, and let's boil it down to its essential. What it really is here is it is a medicine. It's a medication, roughly. Some may argue that it's a poison, and I would tend to agree. But we're talking about a medicine, really, a dental medicine that's meant to make your teeth better. All right. Well, we got fluoride in our toothpaste and things like that, but it's for people who are not. They don't have access to be able to actually take good care of their teeth. They don't have dental tool access or access to, maybe their backwater or something. That's the kind of the mentality of it. And it is the forced taking of a medicine that is arguably toxic for the human body. And I can think of no other medicine. Can you imagine if your government decided to just put headache medicine in the water? Because, people get fevers, people get headaches, and if we just got a low dose of like Aleve or Advil or something in our drinking water at all times, do you think that people would be okay with that? Of course not. I don't want the government putting anything in my water. I want to put what's in my water. If I choose to put something in my water, let me do that. All right, I'll plop some Alka-Seltzer in there. All right, drink that. But I don't want the government to decide what's best for me. All right, I don't care what 9 out of 10 dentists say. I am the one that chooses what goes into my body. I choose. Nanny state be damned. I choose what goes into my body. I don't care what a majority of my neighbors think is important that goes in my body. If you think that fluoride is so important and you want it so bad, okay, more power to you. Brush with fluoride toothpaste. Do everything you can. And also think about this when it comes to water as well. We have to talk about, how often when you're drinking are you swishing it around your mouth, and is it having an effect? I mean, most people are just chugging that water, and it's bypassing their teeth for the most part and going into your body and being absorbed to your liver. People get toxic liver syndrome and all sorts of other crap. People wonder why cancer is rampant nowadays. I mean, we got fluoride in our drinking water. Anyway, I'm not going to sound too conspiratorial. I know it sounds like that, but for me, it's just a choice. It's a choice. I should have the choice, and I don't want the government making choices for me. I know what's best for me. I don't need some body of people in a city. I mean, we're talking about in this city. This is Kelso. This is a city with a very small population, and it wouldn't take much for them to be able, a small group of people like a city council to influence a lot of change in this city. And there's not very many people there to hold them accountable. If nobody's paying attention, they can pretty much do whatever they want. And I want to choose what goes into my body. I have that right. No one else. Anyway, we're really down to the wire here. I can already tell we're not going to have time to get through the entire Commerce Clause. So conversation here. We've covered so many other things, but I want to talk about it. So what we're doing is today we're going to go ahead and go into another overdrive hour until we're done with this. So if you're listening on haywiregulch.com right now, if you would like to continue listening to our program, we're going to be doing more over at OnTheMoveShow.com. But if you want to continue staying on Haywire Gulch, support those other guys too. Feel free to support the next guys that are coming on. I'm sure they're awesome. I haven't had an opportunity to get to know everybody yet, but I don't want to take that audience away. But just to give you guys a heads up, though, we will be continuing on at the third hour. At the beginning of the third hour at OnTheMoveShow.com and continuing on our conversation about the Commerce Clause. So anyway, at this point, we are going to go ahead and enter into the Mac Attack, and this is the segment where I talk about outrageous stuff. So go ahead and sit back, relax. We're going to go on a little journey here of the Commerce Clause.
It's time for the Mac Attack!
Alrighty, so if you want to join today's conversation, feel free. The number to the show is 360-450-5625, or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. In addition, we have facebook.com/onthemoveshow, and we have our Twitter at OnTheMoveShow on Twitter. So, all right, we have. Let's see here. Okay. All right, we're just going to press forward here. The Commerce Clause. This is in the Constitution, and what exactly? You may not be familiar with the Commerce Clause. A lot of people aren't. A lot of people have heard it, but they don't know what it is. It's Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3 of the Constitution. So if you have your little pocket Constitution, which I hope that some of you do, you have those available, go to Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3. This clause gives the Congress the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with the Indian tribes, okay? This is verbatim the text in it, okay? So before we really start to address this clause. Let's actually discuss the definition of the word commerce. And just so you guys know, if you want to follow along, I'm actually paraphrasing right now an article I wrote on our blog. It's it's OnTheMoveShow.com. Click on the blog link, and this is the one about the commerce clause on there. So you can actually follow along, and I'm just going to kind of paraphrase and pick some stuff out of this article here that I wrote. And if you guys want to follow along, you can. Anyway, so as far as the definition of commerce, we're talking about, and it's defined, commerce itself is defined as an interchange of goods or commodities, especially on a large scale between different countries, foreign commerce, or between different parts of the same country, which would be domestic commerce, which is trade or business. Okay, so we're basically talking about something that you profit off of, you gain something out of doing. That's what commerce is. So. And it's important to note that when James Madison was at the Constitutional Convention, and by the way, for those of you who aren't aware, James Madison is considered the father of the Constitution. He's one of the major architects of the Constitution. So when he was at this Constitutional Convention, this is the place where all the ideas were coming from the Constitutional Convention. The people who wrote the stuff, they were at the Constitutional Convention. So in no instance at all, no instance whatsoever was the term commerce used to define anything other than gainful activity or anything broader than trade. Okay, so why am I bringing that up? Well, why is this important? It's because the Commerce Clause that we see today has been used in so many different ways, and it's used as a justification for the federal government's involvement in situations that absolutely cannot be described as trade or any kind of, gainful commerce. So, for example, and let's start from more recent history, and we'll work our way backwards. Okay, there was a Supreme Court case called Gonzalez v. Reich, and in this Supreme Court case, the federal government they used the Drug Enforcement Agency, otherwise known as the DEA, to seize and destroy 6 marijuana plants owned by a California citizen. These were medical marijuana plants that were grown in accordance with California law, the California Compassionate Use Act, which authorized marijuana for medical purposes and allowed for patients to grow a limited amount of marijuana for that end. So anyway, the Drug Enforcement Agency, they roll into California and they use the Controlled Substances Act as justification for their raid, and that went to the Supreme Court. And the Controlled Substances Act is a federal law, so we're talking about state rights versus federal rights right here, okay? In addition, we're also talking about the rights of the individual to decide what they put into their body. This is similar to the conversation we just had about fluoride. So anyway, the court decided that even though marijuana was grown for personal use and was never intended to be traded, sold, or to travel across state lines, and this is important, okay? This was only for personal use. It was for medical use by the individual. They decided that even though it didn't meet these criteria, which would be used to consider something as commerce, the Supreme Court decided that the federal government still had the authority to regulate the commodity based on powers it had been given to it, the federal government, by the Commerce Clause. And they used established precedent for that. And this is really important. When a lot of people think of how laws are implied or the Constitution, there's so much more to it than just what does the Constitution say? You know, there shouldn't be, and I completely disagree with that, but the way the system is, in fact, is that they look at case law, precedent, and that's so important. And I've really started to realize how important it is to understand and know case law, because then you understand how the law is applied in regards to the Constitution and things like that. Now, I disagree with it almost entirely. I have a fundamental problem with the Supreme Court interpreting the document, which gave them their very existence in a way that they were never authorized to do via the Constitution. That's where I have an issue with it. And you know, I've talked about my ideas and, you know, Mark Levin's ideas as far as what should be done about that. So we won't get into that conversation today. But anyway, their exact verbiage, what they said was that Congress had the power to regulate activities that are part of an economic class of activities that have substantial effect on interstate commerce and that has been firmly established through other court precedent. All right, and we'll get to that here. According to the Supreme Court, Congress had the power to regulate interstate commerce that was, by definition, not interstate nor commerce. So it was for personal use. This person was growing something for personal use, and yet it was labeled commerce. And the power to regulate that was protected by the court. And anyway, where the actual precedent came from was this the actual case. It's called Wickard v. Filburn. This is a Supreme Court case, and in this case, you guys are going to be blown away. It's disturbing. Anyway, the Wickard v. Filburn case is a case that a lot of us aren't really familiar with. A lot of us have probably never heard about it. I know I didn't up until recently, but it's single-handedly responsible for expanding the limits of the federal government's regulatory powers under the Commerce Clause. So let's give a little background, and I'm looking at the clock here. We got 6 minutes left in the program here, so we're going to get the rest of this on the other side of a break here, but we're going to press on for the next few minutes here. So Wickard v. Filburn, it's a case that came on the wake of the New Deal. So if you're familiar with all the regulations that FDR was trying to push down to, quote, stimulate the economy, unquote, then you'll be familiar with that. One of those was the Agricultural Adjustment Act, and that put a cap on how much wheat that farmers could produce in America. So they said, you know what, you can't grow. I know it's your property, you own the land, but according to the Commerce Clause, we have the right to do this. And they put a cap. They limited how much you could grow as an American citizen of wheat. And that wasn't all, but that was just what this case was about. So if a farmer exceeded the cap, they'd be subject to a penalty or a tax, okay? Roscoe Filburn, he was an Ohio farmer. He owned a small little farm, and he produced some wheat. Some of that wheat was meant for feeding his livestock, and some of it was meant for actually selling on the market. And when he was told, when the authorities came to him and said, "Hey, you're growing too much wheat," he said, "Look, this is for my own personal use, and the rest of it I will sell. I'm not going to sell more than what the cap is." And anyway, the case was heard by the Supreme Court, and Filburn argued that the government had no right to tell him what he could and could not grow on his own land for personal use, and I tend to agree with him. The federal government argued that though Filburn's personal use may seem like a trivial amount of wheat, if farmers around the country were allowed to do the same exact thing that Filburn was doing, it would essentially make the cap established by the Agricultural Adjustment useless. So anyway, we're going to come back from a break on the other side of this hour here, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this. So for those of you on haywiregulch.com right now, I appreciate you guys tuning in, and thanks so much for your support. And for everybody else who wants to listen to the rest of the program, feel free to head on over to OnTheMoveShow.com, and we're going to be broadcasting and finish up the rest of this episode on the Commerce Clause. And for those of you on Haywire who won't be joining us, like I said, I really appreciate your guys' support, and thanks for tuning in. And if you guys want to check us out on our website, OnTheMoveShow.com, we got our Facebook, Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow, YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow, Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow, and of course, you can follow us at Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow as well. And anyway, we're going to go ahead and cut to a commercial break, and when we get back, we're going to be in on the third hour, so don't go anywhere. We're going to wrap up the rest of this Commerce Clause information.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mac Worley III.
And we're back. I appreciate you all sticking with us. If you're listening now, you are listening on our website, OnTheMoveShow.com, or you are listening on Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. And if you are hearing this, you are hearing the overdrive hour of the podcast. And I appreciate you guys sticking with us. I always say that we have so much information to cover within any given conversation. I mean, it always seems like we need a little extra time, and that's what happened today. You know, things kind of got off kilter a little bit. I went way over in some segments, and anyway, I kind of had to hurry through. So I'm really thankful that Spreaker allows us the ability to actually go into an overdrive hour. It gives us a little extra time here, another hour, and we may not necessarily use that whole hour, but we'll do it until we're done with the topic at hand here. So the Commerce Clause is what we were talking about. In particular, we were focusing on the Wickard v. Filburn case, and like I said, in this situation, it's important to note what was argued and what happened. So, like I said, Filburn argued that the government had no right to tell him how much wheat that he could grow on his own property, his own land, for his own personal use. And the federal government argued that though Filburn's personal use may seem like a trivial amount of wheat, if farmers around the country were allowed to do the same exact thing, it would essentially make the cap established by the Agricultural Adjustment Act, which was put in place after the New Deal, useless. And what was the purpose of that cap? Why did they even put the cap there in the first place? It was established to help control prices in the American wheat market. And FDR, he thought that, hey, this would be a good idea. Let's do all these changes into the markets out there and start regulating the crap out of it in a way that he thought would create jobs and bring America out of the Great Depression. That was where all these came from. And again, they're all justified via the Commerce Clause. So, an interesting side note here, a little sidebar, is that the Supreme Court, they actually were shooting down FDR's his plans, all of his proposals. Were getting major losses in the Supreme Court. They were shooting him down, saying no, that violated the Constitution. You don't have the right to do that. But then FDR decided that he was tired of these Supreme Court justices, and he said that if you don't play my way, then I'm going to pack the court. So I'm going to load the court up with more justices, because there's nothing in the Constitution that said I can't do that. And I'm going to load the court with more justices, just change the number, the amount that sits on the court. And I'm going to appoint more justices that will be a majority and outnumber those who are sitting now on the court. And, of course, the people I appoint are going to be those who lean politically with me and will do as I want them to do. That's what FDR's MO was. So they call it the change that saved nine, I believe, is the phrase. But because the Supreme Court realized, oh, crap, we're about to get gutted here, and we're going to lose all control over this court, if we don't change our vote, the way that we look at FDR's tactics and the legislation he's trying to push through, if we don't change our vote, we are going to lose our power and become outnumbered and whatnot. So they decided all of a sudden to be with FDR's New Deal programs. doesn't that sound ridiculous, by the way? It to me is the most diabolical thing that I could ever imagine a leader doing. You know, that to me is plain dirty. He's literally changing the rules of the game. I think this is pretty equivalent, I would say, to Harry Reid changing the rules of the Senate to get rid of the filibuster. Rules that were there that you had Democrats, like, for example, Harry Reid and President Barack Obama, by the way, who were saying how devastating it would be to change the rules in the middle of the game. You know, and how messed up it would be to do that. They were saying all of that while they were in the minority, but now that they're the majority, or at least when they were the majority, they got rid of it when they could. They used the, quote, nuclear option. So anyway, back to the Commerce Clause. I was just trying to tie some things into how, you know, our government is working nowadays. So the New Deal had a lot to do with this. So you understand the historical relevance behind this. And again, this cap was established to help control the prices in the American wheat market. But now that this new court, very subservient to FDR, was in place here, the court established that Congress can regulate purely intrastate, which means activity, or intrastate means within a state. So they can regulate purely intrastate activity that is not in itself commercial, i.e. not produced for sale, if it concludes that failure to regulate that class of activity would undercut the regulation of the interstate market in that commodity. So we're talking about inside the state, which is intrastate, and outside the state, interstate. So they're saying that hey, if farmers growing wheat for themselves would undercut the interstate market, where people are buying from across state lines, and that's actual commerce. If them growing it themselves is affecting the commodity, the market for that commodity, they have every right to do it under the powers given by the Commerce Clause. So, now that we understand the historically relevant cases considering the Commerce Clause, and we've also discussed the definition of commerce itself. You guys understand that commerce is business, trade. We also talked about, how it was influenced in terms of the Constitutional Convention, the debate that was held there. They never used commerce as anything other than trade or something for meant for selling, like trading, business, that kind of thing. So that's commerce. That's commercial activity. Now that we understand these things, let's discuss the cases for and against the use of the Commerce Clause, okay? The case for the Commerce Clause is pretty similar. It's a similar case that would have been made by, for example, the Federalists in the Constitutional Conventions. They wanted a strong and a centralized federal government that would be capable of dealing with any problem they faced. That's why they created the office of the presidency, and the Federalists were largely responsible for bringing everybody to the table to sign the Constitution. All right, they wanted to establish this new form of government. They wanted to replace the Articles of Confederation. So, for example, the New Deal, it set forth this tsunami of regulations by the federal government, which attempted to put these Americans back to work and instill confidence in the American people concerning industry. We're talking about the Great Depression. It was a really hard time. People were standing in bread lines. A lot of factories were closed. But the Commerce Clause now gives through these regulations, this regulatory power, it gives the government, the federal government, the ability to regulate every single aspect of American life and business. And as for the reasons why the government's use of the Commerce Clause can be supported, we can simply look at the creation of the United States. There was a lot of turmoil. There were, a lot of issues when the United States was actually using the Articles of Confederation, and this, a lot of it came from the interstate commerce. The states were imposing tariffs on other states, goods that were produced from other states, and basically making it so that people of one state would be taxed out the wazoo if they wanted to buy something from another state. So they had to spend their money within the state. That's what they were doing, and it was causing a lot of problems, a big rift between these states, and the country was poised to tear itself apart. So anyway, the Federalists, they argued that a strong centralized federal government with a president at the helm, a strong executive, would be the glue that would essentially hold the country together. And in fact, James Madison, who was originally a Federalist, we're talking about the people who were meant to, or who supported the strong central government. James Madison was originally a Federalist, and he eventually changed sides and became an anti-Federalist with his good friend Thomas Jefferson. But he said in a letter to Thomas Jefferson that most of our political evils may be traced to our commercial ones. And that was the reason that the Commerce Clause was inserted into the Constitution, to create stability, to resolve these state disputes, and give the federal government the regulatory power to step in and say, hey, come on, guys, you can't do this. Let's play nice, essentially. That's the argument for the federal government to have this power anyway. And on the other hand, the contrary argument is the argument that would have been from the anti-federalists, okay? These other people on the other side of the debate. I would tend to probably agree more with the anti-federalists, but I'm happy that the United States has a constitution. I'm happy that the Federalists were successful in that regard, because who knows what our country would look like now if there was no constitution and the Federalists hadn't brought everybody to the table. But as I stand now, I'm an anti-federalist. So you got to remember that that these the founders were coming from a government that had unbelievable power and influence. They could do anything they wanted. You're talking about a kingdom. I mean, kings and queens. This kind of hierarchy. You have no recourse. If your king wanted to search your home, they could search your home. If they wanted to silence you, they could throw you away into a prison, and you would never see the light of day. So it was a very strong centralized federal government that used its power to impose its will on the American colonists. And the anti-federalists, they were extremely concerned about this. They were concerned about creating the same exact kind of tyranny that they had just fought a bloody war to escape. So when we're discussing the Commerce Clause, it's important to ask ourselves the question, what would the anti-federalist have to say about this federal government using this innocuous blurb in the Constitution to create and expand so much regulatory power? What would they say? It's easy to argue that the Supreme Court itself would be like, yeah, let's give the government more power. They would side on the Federalist side, of course. So would Congress, and so would the President. They're part of the government, the federal government, to speak exactly. So why wouldn't a branch of the federal government say, yeah, the federal government has this power? Why wouldn't they? Of course they want that power. Even if they're giving it to another branch, hey, expand the federal government. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, Congress. Haha, right? Okay, so anyway, to me, I believe that the Federalists or the Anti-Federalists, they would have been just shocked and appalled at how the Supreme Court has interpreted this clause of the Constitution. The court has literally taken an extremely liberal interpretation of this clause to mean that Congress has the power to literally regulate everything and anything. These powers, they were never given expressly to Congress in the Constitution. They were never told that you can define things that aren't actually commerce by the definition of the word commerce as well as commerce. It didn't say that. Nothing in the Constitution said that. But to make matters worse, as I've covered, the power of the Supreme Court to actually be the ultimate arbiter on all things constitutional was never given to them by the Constitution either. They gave that power to themselves in Marbury v. Madison in 1803. So now our government regulates everything that we can put into our bodies to how much water we can hold in our toilet. They have so much influence on our everyday life. It is astounding. Most people don't even realize that you have to ask the government for permission to do so much, even on your own property. I have a personal story. We'll get back to this in one moment, but I have a personal story of when my father was attempting to actually add on to his deck. He already had a deck, and he wanted to enclose it with a screen, just a screen to go around his deck that was already there. The county government told him, nope, you can't build that. We don't have enough water to put out a fire at your house already. So it would be too risky for us to let you do that. And it's his own property. These are the outrageous things that the federal government or even our local governments are trying to do. We saw what's happening with eminent domain in Kelso. So anyway, this to me, it blows me away because our federal government thinks that they can tell us, what we can grow as a crop for our own personal consumption. That they think that they can tell us what we can put into our body. Our current model of federalism, where the states and the federal government share power, is growing disproportionately in the federal government's favor. We've created this huge federal leviathan, and the states are losing their voice. They're just being silenced. And I've talked about in the past all of the different reasons for it. State sovereignty is really being tremendously hurt by the regulatory arm through the Commerce Clause, the General Welfare Clause of the Constitution. And in addition to that, the lack of the senators to be elected by the state legislators, that was taken away from the states. So they no longer elect their representatives in the Senate. Now that's done by the people, which is double representation. In case you didn't know, the Constitution originally had senators elected by the states, which gave them a voice of government, which made them another check and balance. Well, we've removed that check and balance now. So the states, they've lost their ability to govern themselves without the long arm of the federal government reaching in and enforcing its will. And, I can only imagine that this is going to continue. The natural course of things is that governments will expand and get more power. And when you have essentially a tug of war going on right now, you have a much stronger federal government than you do the states. And it's only a matter of time that they keep pulling more and more power in their direction. That's the way it will work. The federal government will always win in terms of state rights against the states themselves because they have way more power. They have way more ability to coerce the states. But what I believe to be the most poignant argument, to be made, at least against the way the federal government uses the Commerce Clause itself, is the mere definition of the word commerce. The government is now exceeding its powers based on the definition of loan of the word. So if commerce is trade, as defined during the Constitutional Convention, and during and in the actual dictionary itself, then the federal government has absolutely no justification to tell us what we can do with goods for personal consumption. And again, Wickard v. Filburn, that was like the landmark case that gave them this ability. So the Supreme Court is responsible for the way that we look at the Commerce Clause and the way it's used and interpreted by the federal government and applied to the Constitution. The Wickard v. Filburn case, it created the precedent for the way that the Supreme Court interprets this kind of case to this day. And based on that precedent, it will continue to expand, and the federal government was given more broad regulatory power and control over business and industry and the way that Americans just live their lives. No one can know for sure what the founders' intent was in the creation of the Commerce Clause, but I honestly believe that they would be just appalled at what they have seen, what they see in today's government and the way that our federal government has expanded. I do not believe that they would support this kind of use of the Commerce Clause. And, even Ben Franklin said, when he was asked what kind of government that they made when he was leaving the convention, he said, "A republic, if you can keep it." And that's important to note because it does take all of us to fight this kind of oppression and tyranny. And it's something that can't be done if we don't have the knowledge and the information. So I hope that helped you guys understand a little bit of the history around the Commerce Clause. Feel free to continue your reading and educate yourself on other case laws in regards to that as well. Also take a look at the General Welfare Clause of the Constitution. It's something that you should look at because they've used that as well to expand. And we've talked about public health. This is one of those things that they do, general welfare. They use public health. That's one of the reasons why Obamacare was passed. These things are super important, and it's really important that we all understand and realize that these things affect us. they're not just dry history. So anyway, like I said, I'm curious if you guys really do appreciate me covering this kind of stuff. If you do, please let me know. You can email me, Talk On The Move Show. You can get us on Facebook, facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. You can message us on Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. And or on Twitter, twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. So feel free to follow us on all that stuff, like our Facebook, all that good stuff. Follow us on Spreaker and Twitter. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/OnTheMoveShow. And, every week we broadcast every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can get it all at OnTheMoveShow.com and simulcast at HaywireGulch.com as well. So anyway, I appreciate you guys tuning in. I want to say, first of all, big thanks to you guys, members of the Mac Pack. You guys are the reasons why we do this week after week, so thank you for your continued support. I really do appreciate it. In addition to that, I also want to thank our special guest, Dan Sandini. He's a citizen journalist out here in Portland, Oregon. And I just want to say thanks so much for him coming on the show. Please go check out his website, daylightdisinfectant.com. Also, you can subscribe to him on youtube.com/daylightdisinfectant. Anyway, guys, we're going to go ahead and split it. I appreciate you guys tuning in. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, get on the move.